you. Hopefully these aren't on.
Looks like a teleprompter.
Barely see anything. Are we on? Yes, we are on. Thank you so much for being here today at our talk at Primavera Pro. My name is Mirka. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. And I'm going to shortly introduce myself, the topic, and then hand over to my great panel here. I'm originally a sociologist focused on culture and on collecting data, and then realized when I was on my way to PhD that the music industry is weirdly enough the friendlier place to be. I also like to curate and produce festivals that are crossing boundaries between different things like music, film, art, politics, community building, and I'm the senior program manager for the Most Wanted Music Festival and Conference in Berlin by the Berlin Music Commission. Starting out, I was more interested in gender equality. I was in the first cohort of Key Change, a program focused on gender equality in the music industry. But I realized very quickly that I do not identify as female. I'm non-binary, and I also realized that there's so much more forms of discrimination happening, and that they are more important because they have less access to everything, less power, less standing, and less visibility. So I focused on intersectionality going out, and that's how we created our agency called Save the Dance. It's focused on safer spaces, inclusion, diversity, equity. We work with all kinds of different settings, from very small DIY clubs to techno clubs like Tresor, we've worked with them, and up to 60,000 people festivals, I guess, sports events, the European Championships, had a culture part, which we also work with. So I will bring that to the table, and everyone else has their club background, and we're going to be talking about that in a bit. We have 45 minutes today, and afterwards we have the possibility to ask questions, so feel free to think about it while we're talking. And now I will shortly introduce the topic. So, in general, nightlife, as well as culture, has always been a place for marginalized people, for spaces to retreat in your community, to feel safe, to be free. At the same time, it's also the space where everyone gets to meet, no matter who they are, where they come from. It's kind of like an equalizer in a way. Of course, there's also been issues that has to do with harassment, with discrimination, with boundary crossings, both, weirdly enough, in the marginalized communities themselves, as well as in the mixed kind of settings. And by the way, virtual reality has not been better. So if you haven't known before, weirdly, there's actually now software in place that limits how close avatars can get to each other, because there has been so much harassment happening in virtual space. Would be great if we could be doing that in real life too. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. So we're going to look into the clubs that are actually now doing things, that are implementing codes of conduct, that are striving to develop safer space policies, educating their staff, so working on prevention, but just as important, also dealing with how to respond to cases of harassment, because it's not just being on the preventive side, it's also about being able to deal with things that is just as equally important. I'm going to focus on key takeaways, on practical things, hopefully some things you can take home. Even though this is focused on club culture, I think most of the things we're going to be talking about can work in any setting. It'll be just a little bit adjusted, but it can work in a festival, it can work in an organization, in a sports club, wherever. However people come together, there's always some sort of discrimination happening, unfortunately. So we're going to start with a question to the audience. I'm just going to wait. Or to all of you here, and of course also anyone who's at home watching on YouTube. We have a little Mentimeter, and I would love for you all to think about the question, what does a safer space mean to you, and what do you personally need to feel safe, welcome, and also good? And we're going to be talking about it a little later, and you can either use the QR code using your camera, or you can go to menti.com and use the code 18532431. It's very easy, it's anonymous, we don't know who does what. It's just a way to collect a little bit of input from your side too, because it's always interesting to see what different cultures, different settings, different events have to say. So, Now I'm getting to my lovely panel. Please introduce yourself and let me know who you are, where you work, and if you like, also include your pronouns for inclusivity.
So I am Nayara. Nayara Lassa. I'm she. I work at Sala Apolo, a venue, music-like venue and club here in Barcelona, a quite old venue that has been working for a lot of years. And I am the responsible of the artistic office, that is responsible for the programming team, communication team, and the production team.
Great, thank you so much. Judy.
Hi, I'm Judy Griffith. I'm from Fabric nightclub in London, and I'm the programming director there for mainly Saturday nights, like just our kind of house and techno night. But yeah, we oversee all the external events as well. I've been there for 20 years. I don't know what else did you ask me?
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Hi everyone, my name's Nikki Boom, and I'm from Berlin. I work at a festival called Berlin Atonal, which is a place that kind of like platforms experimental audiovisual performances. I'm also involved in some other kind of like community initiatives that are sort of centered around giving people with marginalized experiences more of a voice and more of a platform to express themselves.
Oh, that's a perfect bridge to where we're going now. So because my question, of course, next is what does a safer space mean to you? And what was the reason for you to start? And we're not going to be going in rows. Anyone wants to start?
For me, I think a safer space is about creating somewhere where people have the opportunity to explore different forms of identity and also experiment with different types of self-expression and to also form a community. And I think it's important that we remember that like we're talking about a safer space because nowhere is completely safe. And there is also a difference between feeling sort of psychologically safe and also being actually physically safe. So I think kind of perfect examples of this are sort of like LGBTQ clubs in America that have been attacked, so people go to some place as a refuge, but they might, to a certain degree, feel psychologically safe, but then there's a kind of like a physical reality that comes and messes with that. So that's what it means for me, and it's kind of like I only sort of learned this recently that the whole concept comes actually from the 60s in America. It sort of stems from, again, sort of queer communities and feminist communities there was still kind of like, there's still criminalization when it came to those communities. So that's when they needed to find safer spaces.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, well, actually, for me it's exactly the same. Just to add, I think a safer space, it's important to say, as you tackled, that it's never, risk zero doesn't exist. So it's a place where the personnel also, and they all work together with a commitment. They are really into the job of doing and preserving all this freedom and respect. So it's not only about how you feel, it's about the people that will work there also, how they manage with all this, maybe the cases that comes up. So it goes, also in the practical way. And it's really, really important for everybody to be on board on this topic. Yeah. And they work with completely coordinatedly, and they work together and along with all the issues. So it's not only about that, but also of the personal, how you feel, that you feel safer, because you know if something is going to happen to you, you will be well attended, and you know somebody is going to respond good on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, obviously, with both, and really much more to add. You know, it's just a place where you feel safe, that you know that you can just go out just for dancing. I just want to go somewhere where I can just dance without getting harassed or sort of hassled by anybody, and that everybody's there for the right reasons, and that there's also support from staff and around me, that I can feel completely safe on the dance floor, just expressing myself, and just anyone just should be able to be who they are and express themselves how they want to in a nightclub space, because it kind of annoys me a little bit, because that, for me, was what attracted me to clubbing in the first place, was the fact that I felt safe. I felt there was people that looked like me around me, and I felt like I was always around like-minded people that were there for music and the community that is around that. I've got to say that it's only in the last maybe 8 or 9 years of me being in Clubland that I've noticed this harassment thing creeping up, and creeping in, and that we've had to do. We never used to have to do anything like this in the first decade of Fabric. It was just all very and then in the last 10 years, all these different things have come into play that we have to do to make sure that people have a safe night out. And it's kind of annoying that it didn't progress into what it started. Because when it started, this scene, it was all about love, and everybody was together, and it was all different types of people on the dance floor. But then it just kind of moved off as it progressed and sort of got a bit more segregated. And so you kind of have different tribes and different clubs now, rather than them all being together in one place. And I think that's been a way of it changing into this kind of thing where people expect that they can infiltrate your space now,
Although I found it interesting that you say it was different, looking back, I feel it wasn't different, and I'm 42 now. I think we just didn't know, and we also didn't talk about a lot of things.
Yeah.
At least that's why where I grew up, there was a lot of things happening, and a lot of things happened which, looking back in my life, I felt like was actually quite off, with power relations, with hierarchies, with people taking advantage. And I thought it was in my consent, but it wasn't really, because I couldn't have, not with the power being so unequally distributed.
Maybe we were more tolerant then. Maybe we were just sort of ignored it. I don't know. But
yeah,
as I said, I felt really safe when I was going out clubbing in my early days. I never felt any kind of harassment. Everybody seemed to be there for dancing and not to chat you up or whatever. Everyone just wanted to be on the dance floor and listen to that DJ. And for me, that's changed in the last decade. And, you kind of feel less safe in different spaces depending on how active the staff are in kind of making you feel all right in the club, So...
Yeah, I think that there are 2 points to that. I think one, part of where I work as well is also includes a club called Tresor, which last year celebrated 31 years. And as part of that, I project managed a festival for 2 months, which incorporated an exhibition that sort of dug into the archives. And one of the things that is, especially kind of within electronic music, within club culture, is that obviously it's become so commercialized, right? So in the beginning, in '91, when Tresor started, the wall came down. It was just a bunch of, for want of a better word, misfits who came together and just wanted to have a good time. And there was that peace, love, and harmony thing. And now it's become this $1 million business, right? Which is obviously reflected in the fees that DJs get. And the fact that they're on these main stages and on podiums, whereas before it was just a completely different vibe.
True.
But I think to your point, there's also something to be said about, even the concept of awareness, right, is a relatively new thing, that not all clubs, be interesting to hear how that is with you, and, know. But we have an awareness team at Tresor who are amazing, but lots of clubs don't have awareness teams, for a variety of reasons, and there are, certain things that were just kind of thought, oh, that's just what happens, right? Yeah. It's, guys do that, or some people do that, but it's just what happens, and now we have a much more, I think, a sort of better awareness of what is okay and what's not okay, and it's okay to say no, and it's okay for someone to listen to that no,
Yeah. That's true.
So focusing on that, how did you guys start, or what have you been doing? Maybe we'll go to the practice.
For us, actually, the trigger, I think it was the Me Too movement. From the Me Too movement, I mean, in my team, our team is all women, and we just started to think, okay, we have to do something. I mean, that's the awareness that we actually were working there, and we said, hey, we have to do something about this. I mean, what's going on? So let's start. So we started by the first thing we thought, it was that we had to be really get all the stuff into it. I mean, we didn't want to do a big fuss in the media or whatever about it. I mean, we said, okay, we have to work from the inside. If we work from the inside, the experience is going to be good. So if the experience is good, then it will talk about it alone. And that's how we started all, because we were really, we knew we had to do something about it. So we started with this manifesto, and then these rules, and then we just kept on. We know it's a really long way, and we have to learn while we walk. But we have to get that thing started. I mean, we are in a big club. It feels every night sold out almost. So how can we do it better? So let's start from the inside. So with training and stuff. So if we are all committed in the thing, then it's in the topic. Then it will work out, and we will, we will find actions at least to put things right.
Yeah,
that's how we started.
Yeah, I can't think what triggered us to start originally, but we've actually been working on this for, oh my goodness, like before COVID and all of that happened, we were campaigning. I think what it was just suddenly, I don't know, maybe sort of 7 or 8 years ago, we just suddenly started getting people saying, hey, like we got hassled on the dance floor. It was just really weird. It just started happening and happening really regularly. Like, people would be on the dance floor saying, oh, I was just dancing away, and then someone decided to grope me, or someone sort of was just a bit too overfamiliar. And we just started hearing these stories a lot more often, pretty much every week. At least one person was calling it out. And thankfully, because a lot of the time, a lot of this kind of stuff just goes unnoticed, and people don't say anything, or they don't know who to report it to, or whatever. And so that's when we thought, wow, we really need to do something about this. We need to set up a campaign like you guys did. We started from inside, and we have like a dedicated welfare team, and they're all trained in people, in looking after people, not security, because that's a whole different thing. They're like, there's medical people within that team as well. There's paramedics, and then there's like just welfare people who are like out there to look out for you, who you could talk to. Even if you just lost your friends or you just wanted a breather, you can just go up there and chat to them. They're really like open and friendly. And actually, we've just introduced now where they wear like red armbands, and they're like casually dressed. They're not dressed like security, because we want them to be approachable, because we found that a lot of the women didn't want to approach the security, and that when they did, sometimes the security would be like, oh, they're just asking questions. You're like, mate, you don't want to be asking questions. So you've got to listen to the victim, So that's when we realized, like, not only do this welfare team needed, we also still need to train security in that response, for the first response, just in case they go to them first. But we make the security pass them straight onto the welfare team.
Yes.
We don't really allow the security to deal with it. Because, as well, it's hard to have a team of security. If we had a team of security that was exactly the same people every single week, then life would be much easier, because you can just train your staff and they do what you want to do. But sadly, since COVID, the hospitality industry for those kind of roles is a lot less, and it's a lot bigger turnover. So more often than not, you train a load of crew, and then the following week it's another crew.
Another crew, yes.
And you've got to train them again and again. So this is why sometimes things go wrong and they're not followed through, is because the staff is new again, and it's new again.
But it's also a different job, and I think that's something like when clubs don't have we call it awareness team, which weirdly enough in English, it's an English word that's not used in English. It's safer space team, I guess, or welfare team.
Welfare team.
They often say, why don't we have security? Why do we need them extra? Because it's different. Because the security, they deal with perpetrators, with harassers. With the welfare team, they deal with survivors and their well-being. And it's a completely different job.
Totally, yeah.
Totally. Yeah, for us as well. I mean, we work with Observatory of for homophobia here in Barcelona, and we have a stand that is in every club. I mean, it's a fixed stand. You can go there and just ask for help, and there's a psychologist that will help you out. And of course, a lot of people, as you said, go to security because it's the first thing they know. They are dressed up in crew and say, okay, I'm going to go to the door and say, hey, I've been insulted or harassed, and we also have an internal protocol because, as you said, there's a lot of turnover in this crew, so they don't have to deal with that. They just pass on the case. And since we have this fixed stand, lila point or purple point, where there is somebody that actually will look after and see and with no judgment at all, will just listen to you. We have also an infirmary and a space where we just need to listen to people that have some type of problems without the noise, without the crowd, without people pushing into, wow, what's happening? What?
Yes.
Because normally the crowd gets really into the middle. But it's really important to get also the security crew in the commitment, because
Definitely.
they are the people that are with uniforms. So I don't know why, but people just normally go there.
People
because
are used to going to security.
Are used to. Yeah. They used to go there. They used to go there. So we have an internal protocol because we've seen that as well. So just we have this case. Let's take it to the awareness team.
Yeah.
It's really important also.
Maybe Nikki can also talk
it's
about
a whole cultural shift that needs to happen, right? So on the one end, someone needs to feel empowered enough to know that that's not right, and then they need to know that there's someone there who's actually going to listen to them, who has a different energy perhaps to the person who's at the door. And I completely agree with you. Everyone needs to be on board. At Tresor we have everywhere posters that say, take care of yourself and each other, and it's really important as well to know how to be an active bystander, and we can only change things, whether it's to do with spiking, which is a problem in drink spiking, which is a problem, unfortunately, in lots of clubs, or there are a lot of sort of different dynamics that happen in a lot of Berlin clubs because there's a big sex-positive scene as well. So there are there's training that needs to be done with regard to consent codes, also how the lines can be blurred with substance use and abuse, so there's just so much to kind of learn and unlearn, but that takes everyone to be on board, And I think as well, something that I really feel strongly about is that there are, I know Berlin is such a sort of clubbing mecca, and it does have great clubs, but there's a sort of fetishization of the kind of hard door and this whole thing of it's so difficult to get into. I mean, there's one club in particular, of course, which is famous for that. And
no one knows who you're talking about.
No, maybe no names. And I do strongly believe that the energy at the door often gets reflected inside. Right. And I know there are, and perhaps you can speak to this as well, because there are intercultural differences, between Berlin and, Barcelona and London, obviously. But in Berlin, what's quite unique is some clubs now have started to do pre-sale tickets, but pre-sale tickets never guarantee you entry. So you can still come with a ticket and someone can be like, hey, this is not the right space for you. And I think it's just important that it's not about you are not wearing the same right clothes or something, some BS like that. But it's just literally about whether this energy and whether this person fits in with the night
Yeah.
that we're trying to
Yeah, yeah.
create.
It should
you
be
know?
about their attitude, not what
Exactly.
they're dressed in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do that as well. Like, advance tickets doesn't mean that you definitely going to get in. You still get vetted on the door
Yeah.
regardless of having a ticket in advance as well. And we, similar to you, we've had, this is a recent addition, is to put, what is consent? And like, we've put that in the toilets and in public places now, what consent is, because people don't really know. It's so blurred, the lines, and it's really important that people know what's right and what isn't, what's acceptable and what isn't. So we've felt the need to have to put that up in, toilets, like about
And that
what
it's
consent
different
is.
for people. I think that's also like the big thing, that it's not just because 99% of people find something okay. That 1% has totally right to not feel okay about it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because we had one incident where, this is why I said about the security and us now passing it on to the welfare team. But as I said, you can't always stop them going to security as a first port of call. Because we had one that actually sort of questioned the girl, and she was saying about like what had happened to her, and he was like going, yeah, but some people think this, and some people think that's consent, some people don't. And we were like, wow, I can't believe he can't. I mean, we sacked him straight away, and this is what we have to do, because like you said, you've got to train the people on the inside as well. They have to be all on board. They all have to know what your ethics are and be be in agreement with them. Otherwise, it's not worth it. You're not going to get anywhere. We've had to put, now when you come in, you get a little business card now, which will tell you what to do if there's any harassment, and to try to call it out. Like, if you see it as well, this is really important, is that if you're in a club and you see something happening, it's really important that you call it out, and that you go and report it as well. Some people don't do it, they just sort of ignore it.
Yeah.
But it's really, we're trying to create an environment where people feel not just safe, but also safe enough to report.
Yeah, that's
Because you could feel safe, and then something like that could happen to you, and you just don't say anything. You just go, oh, it's all right. But it's really, really important for us to wheedle people out, that people do say that. So I
And
can't
also
really
the
say that
people
enough.
doing those things feel unsafe to do them, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. They've
people
got to
only
feel
do
bad.
things when they think they can get away with it, but if they're aware that someone is like clocking it and they're actually going to do
Deterrence
something.
measure,
Yeah.
like, and saying, and creating the awareness. And we think it's really important. It has to be both ways,
Yeah.
from the audience telling us what happened or how they feel, in order for us to learn how can we, get on with this situation. So it has to be both
It
ways.
has to be a feedback loop. It can't
Yeah,
be
of
top
course.
down. It can't be like from we think you will want that, because that's not taking a survivor centric approach. It should be about people who've gone through things,
Yeah.
and they should be the ones
They should tell us.
decide.
They should tell us. I mean,
Exactly.
for us as a good practice, we have this email where you can send us your respect at sala-apolo.com, where you can tell us what happened, but it's done for us also to know what's happening, because I'm sure there are many things that just go over and we just don't know, because
Totally,
nobody came to the Lila Point, nobody came to the security guys, and it just happened and nobody knows. So
this is really important. Yeah.
if there's a feedback, we can learn from that. So it's really both ways. It has to be, they have to know what they are entering and what are their tools for them to get along with everything. So
That's interesting that you guys do that as well, because we do the same. We've just in the last, since we reopened from thing, we do a weekly post-event survey. So you can go online and fill out a questionnaire about the night, like how was the security, how was your experience, was it positive, like what was negative about the experience, and then we found that this is a space where people actually tell us, not just, oh, the lights weren't good enough for me, or the DJ was shit, or whatever. It's like, they are, like, if someone gets harassed and they haven't had the bottle to go to anyone during the night, they're actually putting it there. So, but this is, even though obviously we prefer them to report it on the night so that we can do more about it, but this gives us an opportunity to get in touch with the customer and, try to sort them and make them feel like the next visit could be a safe one and what to do. And I'm finding the weekly weekly survey really invaluable information.
Or like
It's been one of the most
ongoing
successful things. Yeah.
possibility. So we always recommend having like an opportunity to actually feedback something anonymously. So if you have an online form, you will actually get stuff said to you and told that you will never know it'll happen. A lot of times people, they will say, nothing happens at a venue, nothing happens at a festival. And it's like, yeah, well, do you offer what kind of feedback possibilities are there? And it's very hard to speak out for yourself.
Yeah.
It's very hard to say, I felt discriminated against, I felt that was sexist, I felt that was racist. It is so, so hard. So once you open up a communication channel that is anonymous, you will get like all kinds of feedback that all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, how did we not know that?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And if you have
totally
like
agree.
also like if you log what you have a welfare team, that should always be logged, because if you log stuff, then everyone is not working the same time. So over the amount of time, the incidents, if I only work 1 week and then not the next, I will not know how much stuff accumulates. So I will not have the big picture. So if I log it and then like once a month, once a week, once a year, whatever, I'll look into what's happening. I can see where I can actually need more work done.
Another thing that I think is important that Kia, who heads up our awareness team at Tresor, does is like every Monday there's like a debrief meeting for the awareness team. So it's really, I mean, obviously you can't pour from an empty cup, and it can be quite traumatizing working in that space. So it's also really important that they have a space where they can also offload and like, you know, sort of decompress from what's happened at the weekend and learn as well, you know. So I think, it's just also really important that the people within the organization feel like there's almost
Cared
like an
for.
awareness team for them.
Also,
As
Yeah, exactly. No, very
Yeah, but
true.
there needs to be self-care, and there needs to be like a focus, and that's why it should also not be an unpaid volunteer position, because it's trauma response. And we have to keep in mind it goes up to rape. It goes up to people getting physically abused.
Yeah.
It's not just the verbal things, which, by the way, also can lead to suicide and other mental illnesses. It's a lot of more things happening. And if we don't have a team that takes care of each other as well and of itself, we won't have teams around for much longer. Yeah,
Yeah.
very important.
It's very important to be both ways, to be from the inner side. That's really cool. I mean, it's really nice to do this
Yeah.
It's cool. We didn't talk. I mean, we talk about it, but I think it's for them. Yeah, mentally, it's very important to do this.
They go
this
through a lot,
exercise. Yeah.
you know. It's
Within
good
the
to have
team,
that
I mean,
unpacking.
within the team. Of course, we do briefing sessions, and we work together, and we know when something is wrong, or we have a case that something has gone wrong. Let's talk about this case, but we don't have it in a basis. I mean, we don't do it weekly or monthly, so we just gather when. And it's nice. I will.
It's kind of like
I will check.
Yeah, like a sort of little group therapy session.
Yeah,
That's it.
That's needed.
That's good.
Yeah, that's why it's also important that we have like things where we just go out and have like a group outing to go somewhere that has nothing to do with partying, with drinking, with drugs, with all the other stuff, but we can just meet as people and not as a worker, because it creates a different environment where we can trust and like confide in each other. I think it's super important for us, and especially everyone in the music industry, because we all burn out so easily, because we all love what we do, you know. It's not what we work, it's what we have to do, you know. It needs to be done. Yeah, it is. I mean, for me it is. I'm pretty sure you're all the same.
For all of us, I think.
It's quite funny, actually, because we've been testing some campaigns, and we joined up with this anti-harassment group using the Radiohead song, Don't Be a Creep. And we had all of our staff like wearing them, like the floor staff, the bar staff, and everyone. It was amazing how many people asked for if they could have the T-shirt. But it was just like, it was actually really, really strong message. And, you know, some guys actually on the night be like, oh, this is really awful, you doing this, why are you doing this? And we're like, it's actually an anti-harassment campaign. And, you know, and they're like, oh, we don't like it, don't like it. That's like, well, I'm glad that it's kind of making you feel like that, because, you know, I'd rather you feel like that than someone feel like, because you've like harassed them, like feel like really bad for the rest of their days, like just because you've done one incident, you know? Like, so if it's confronting you, you know, we try to be like a strong message, but a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because obviously, you know, and a bit provocative, because at the end of the day, one of the things is finding the right balance, because the person's out, you're out clubbing, you're out socializing, you don't really want to keep seeing all these negative messages like don't do this, and you don't want people to think that you've got a pandemic of it, you know? It's like not an epidemic, it's like, you know, but it is something that might happen to you, so you have to point it out, but at the same time you don't want to be plastering it everywhere, this. So the T-shirt was really quite a good thing. So we've been doing this probably maybe about 6-7 months, the Don't Be a Creep campaign. That's been really strong. Lots of people have commented about how positive it is at the end. But we had an incident recently where one of our regulars from LGBTQ community came to the club, and he kind of wears like not much clothing, but he just really expressed himself, and I love the fact that he knows that he can come there and feel safe to wear whatever he wants, like, and be safe on the dance floor. And he's a real character. Everybody like loves him, you know, at the club. But one incident that happened actually went a little bit viral, actually, because he was in the club dancing and some idiot like videoed him. Now we have a no photo, no video policy in Fabric, which has been also really positive in the harassment thing. But this guy got his phone out, started videoing him, and to cut long story short, he basically posted this video and said, "I'm never going to Fabric again. Look at the kind of people they've got in the club." I mean, really? And so we barred this guy. We got wind of it, and we ended up barring the guy from the club. And we gave the guy the victim, we gave him like a card that will get him into the club anytime, you know, like priority entry, like a silver card thing. So we gave him this, but from that incident, we came up with another T-shirt, which he proudly wears at the club. Anyway, we got this T-shirt and it just says, "Fuck off, I'm dancing." Sorry. It just says, "Fuck off, I'm dancing." And it's really about the message, and we have them like there. You can actually get them if you want. You can buy them if you want. We've only had them maybe out about 6 or 7 weeks, and we just have them there. They hardly cost anything because it's really about the message. It's not about selling the T-shirt. But it's been the fastest selling T-shirt that we've ever done. It's unbelievable. Like, everybody's buying this T-shirt. Like, it's completely mad. And it's just like, just leave me alone. I just want to dance. I just don't want any hassle. And it's like, it's been really good. It's been
that's a great example of bringing humour into something that's
exactly. You know,
it's
like, just like humour, but it's like a positive message as well. It's like a message that, you know, to tell you not to do something.
We have also T-shirts like metal is queer, techno is queer, flamenco is queer, and we have all these T-shirts as well. And well, we sell them, and it was the benefits were for an association, feminist association.
Oh, brilliant!
And then it's also like, let's let's do it, you know.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
So maybe Nikki, you can tell us about like at Tresor, because there's always like people asking. So how is it going to not make a awareness police? Like, how do you incorporate having the team on site with the people who are just out to dance and to enjoy?
Yeah, I think I don't know. There are kind of different ways of doing it. Like sometimes, and it depends very much on the party, right? Like, because there are loads of different. There's obviously like the club as the umbrella, but there are just so many different promoters who draw different crowds, and so it's all kind of quite individualized depending on who is in the club at any one time. So different things work. You know, sometimes it works having a badge on. Sometimes there's kind of like a safe word, you know, that you can be told of when you're going in. As I said before, there are the posters. And so I think, it's just about well, maybe we should get some T-shirts. But just finding that balance. But I think there is like just a much better awareness now in Berlin. So I think kind of like most of the incidents that do happen, it's mainly because of like substance issues, I think, where people then, like, your perception of things gets you know, like you're not
Yeah,
necessarily in
distorted.
control of that, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like necessarily like weirdos like purposefully saying, I'm going to go to that club tonight and do some bad stuff, you know. But I think that's where it can be quite tricky sometimes. I was in, like, there was another well-known techno club in Berlin, and there was an incident that happened with someone that ended up in the newspapers, and the club was accused of being queerphobic. And the person that it happened to was also a person of colour. And yeah, it got into the media, and there was a big kind of brouhaha about it, and I was on the diversity inclusion training team, and the whole of the entire organisation went through, I don't know, it's like a month of diversity inclusion training workshops, etc.
I was on the team too.
All right, okay.
You were in there.
On a different later on.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And that just taught me so much about how like everyone brings with them like their own like conditioning, privileges and stuff, and how that influences how you perceive things, how you judge others. So it's very easy to kind of like be like, oh, they're like this, they're like that, but you kind of have to, instead of that sort of call out thing, I'm much more interested in a call in. How can we bring people together and find out why they behave and think the way they do, right?
Yeah.
Because often having like a, you know, I think it's nice to give people the benefit of the doubt. Of course, if they continue with a certain behavior, then they need to go. But often, you know, having certain sort of ways of thinking can also be a certain privilege to a certain degree, because not everyone grows up around, like, you know, for me it was like a massive, you know, I've really been living in Berlin for 17 years, but, you know, coming from London, which is so diverse in comparison to Berlin. I know within Germany people think it's diverse, but it's not compared to London. And like even the sort of thing of like, you know, it's difficult to go to any club pretty much in the UK without having black bouncers or security staff or whatever. In Berlin, it's a, you know, it's a topic of conversation of like, oh, let's work with Smiley, who's like a famous Berlin bouncer, and get him to like, you know, sort of coach us on how to deal with those interactions. So yeah, I think because there have been sort of some quite famous incidents, everyone is more aware with it. So to answer your question, I think, yeah, it's always different. It doesn't mean that things don't happen, but it's always just about a constant learning and being curious and open to unlearn as well, you know, because it's changing the whole time. And whether it's, you know, getting your team to get used to using non-gendered language, right?
Yeah.
Or, for example, being like using non-ableist language as well, and how, you know, I think one of the elephants in the room when it comes to safer spaces is how they incorporate people with visible and non-visible disabilities, because they're still not, there's not enough representation, whether it's on the dance floor, but also with acts who get booked, and also within teams, you know.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm really passionate about changing.
And it's funny how when you think about accessibility and people have a completely barrier-free venue, and what do they forget? The stage. What would most people want to get on stage for, like this? You know, it's so weird.
Yeah,
and
but also just this idea that, I mean, everyone thinks that accessibility starts and ends with a ramp and an accessible toilet. It starts right at the beginning of your communication. You know, like, does your social media stuff have alternative text? Can your website be read by a screen reader? Do you actively, on your website, let people know how they can get to your club? It's not a question of someone like trying to dig out some random generic email and hoping that someone may or may not answer it to see whether or not they can get there. It's like, hey, you are welcome, come with us and join us.
Yeah.
You know, and that starts right at the beginning, way before anyone even like tries to get into your space. It's like, oh, where shall I go to tonight? I know that I'm welcome there, regardless. And everything else should just be a given at this. You know, in 2023, the idea that you've got, I mean, of course, there are some spaces historically because of they're in certain buildings or whatever, that's, you know, it's trickier, but it should just be part of the whole concept and awareness plan.
Totally. Yeah, you know. It needs to take in an intersectional approach, including people with disabilities of any kind. Yeah, and some have already been like further. I was like in London just recently, and for example, they had the induction loops on the buses so that deaf people can hear when the bus stops. You know,
Yeah.
and those are things you can also incorporate into like venues, for example, for conference talks, because then
Yeah.
people who are deaf can actually follow as well. There's a really great online resource if anyone is interested from Attitude is Everything. It's free, how to get started on accessibility. I can highly recommend it. I know Nikki also is a fan.
Yeah.
So we are actually already almost at the end of our talking time. So before we go into the Q&A, I would love from you all to hear what would you recommend for people who want to get started, and do you have any kind of like resource or any advice that you want to give from your own experience?
Well,
Get started.
yeah, just get started. That's it. I mean, it's not an easy. It's not an immediate thing. I mean, I think you have to be committed from the beginning, and if you believe in and you want to make a safer space, you have to know your ecosystem. You have to know very well your crowd. You have to know very well your venue and your staff. And it's quite easy to start implementing small differences. So just if you don't know how to start, just, I don't know, make a Google what other venues are doing it and see if you can implement just small, tiny steps.
Yes.
And then it will lead you to. I mean, I think that the most important is the will.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
if there is a will, then you will get to it.
Definitely. I mean, just training your staff, I think that's a good place to start, is training from internally, because they're the ones that are going to be representing it at the end of the day. They're the ones that people are going to be reporting to. So they all have to be knowledgeable and know what's going on and what your stance is on it. You know, we have posters. You can start off really small, just like maybe a few posters, as I said, training the staff, making sure the staff are aware to, that's the most important thing, is that there's a point of contact that can deal with it. And so even if you're a small club and you can only start off with one person that's nominated to be that person, but it's just really important that they're there and that they're tolerant of everything, you know, of all types of people. And yeah, I guess, like you said, just baby steps, like posters, we do business cards, as I said, we do the T-shirts, we have signs up everywhere. It's just like, just an ongoing thing, really. And, you know, we act on the customer. We have a zero tolerance attitude. Anyone that's, you know, done for harassment or caught, they're barred from the club. That's it. You know, we just it's something that really, really needs to be stamped out. But it's a progress. You know, it's not going to change overnight, because you can't change the attitudes of people. But just people need to know that they can't come to your space if they want to behave like that. And that's just sort of, it's just trying to find the right balance of putting that message out. Because at the same time, you don't want to scare people. Like I said, you don't want people to think you've got some kind of epidemic, because it's certainly not the case. It's just that you have to, for that small minority of people that it does happen to, they need to know that you're going to look after them and protect them when they're in the club. So,
Nikki?
The Berlin Club Commission has a thing called an awareness academy, and if you go onto their page, they have loads of resources. Some of them are in German, but a lot of them are in English. Like everything on every single topic you could imagine to do with awareness, diversity, inclusion, equity, etc. He, she, they, also good. They're doing good things.
yeah, they are. They did some events at the club, and actually they were one of our, actually talking about the triggers, they were one of our triggers in terms of that community as well. They taught us a lot.
Yeah,
They
have this great saying when it comes to consent. Unless it's a yes, it's a no.
Totally.
You know?
They spoke to all of our staff, they briefed all the security, they helped us come up with the ethics and stuff of the club, and what we wanted to sort of say. So, yeah, definitely he, she, they was a really good voice to listen to. I mean, even simple things like, because in our club, you know, there's not really that much Wi-Fi. So, you know, if you've like lost your friends, because there's certain apps out there, isn't there now, where you can be in a club and you can find your friends through the app, which I think are really amazing. But and they don't run off Wi-Fi; they run off Bluetooth, because so many clubs do not have the Wi-Fi in the clubs. But what we do now is we realised, like, not having Wi-Fi, because we didn't want everyone reporting or taking photos or posting. But at the same time, you have to think about the people that might not be feeling safe. So we now have like different areas where there's like Wi-Fi zones, and then there's a place upstairs as well where you can go to meet people and go to that little zone and do your thing, or do your Uber. We've got an actual spot where people can wait with a member of security and a member of the welfare team, where women, if they want to order a cab and they're on their own, they know they can go to that spot in the club, order the cab, do anything they want to do on their phone or whatever, you know, and there's someone there to like look after them, sort of even when they're outside. So until they are off of our premises, we are still making sure that they're having a safe night. Even things like we've got like lids. I forgot to say we have lids now for people to put on top of their drinks.
Yeah, that does not work. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think like we now, because you used to have to put your drink down to go and have a cigarette. So it was really, so your drink would be like left on this table. But then when we heard about the spiking thing, it's not something that I've not seen that much in London, to be honest. Yeah. But just in case, we decided to get the lids thing, because people used to have to go outside and leave their cups on a table unattended. So now we wrote to the council and said about this situation, because it was the council that was stopping us from having people take their drinks outside. But now, because of this, our council have allowed us to let customers take their drinks out of them, so they do not have to have them unattended at any point.
I'm going to add info on that, just so, because it's really up to my heart, because I also know people who got spiked.
Tell me.
First of all, there's needle spiking now around, which goes through EpiPens. You will not even notice it. It goes so quickly. It happens in Berlin all the time. Second of all, unfortunately, a lot of people get spiked by their friends. It's a very, very hard truth. So even if you leave it, and you will leave it at some point with your friend for a second, it goes very quick. It's 10 seconds in, and you will not remember who was it. There's also, unfortunately, cases where it's been the bartenders. Also, bartenders are people.
Really?
So those lid things, they just make you feel good.
Wow.
But they don't stop anything. So I actually encourage people not to use them.
Well, also because in Berlin, wasn't it that people were getting injected or something?
That's the needles.
Well,
That's the needle spiking. Exactly.
Absolutely beyond my.
But it's a whole different talk. We can't go into, unfortunately, today. So I don't know, Nikki, do you want to add anything else before we open for the last? I think 10 minutes now.
Resources.
Or anything you want to start with.
I don't know, like. Knowledge is power. I love, and also read, listen to podcasts, watch things, but also just not necessarily through that lens of like us and them. How can I, but just seeing people like as us all one community, right? So I love listening to podcasts about, at the moment, because I'm really into kind of trying to change that, like, disabled activists just shooting the shit, It's not like, oh, they're these people that we need to help, and they're there, it's just like everyone in the full, circumference of their existence, in the same way as like, this idea that there are these sort of homogenous groups of like, I don't know, or like black people do this and all gay people do this, and that's just ridiculous, obviously. So just like understanding all the different layers and nuances within every community, right? And this is, again, a topic for another time, but also within marginalized communities that are in safer spaces, there are hierarchies that reproduce themselves that also then need to be addressed. Because we're all human. So this idea that there is like some perfect minority just because they're minority, is rubbish, We're all human, we're all capable of the same amount of great and not so great stuff, So I think that's really important to kind of always bear in mind before it being like this, like, savior complex or something.
And to get out of the feeling that we're like, it gets like invisible, that the smaller communities, the left wing, the queer communities, the black communities, that they don't have, because it's like us against the world. So in a way, like, we don't talk about things that are within our community, so it's really important to look out for everyone and to start seeing power relations, start seeing issues, privileges, to reflect and to take on responsibility. I think if you have like a club or a venue and you want to start change, then first step is to look at who's at your place. And in Germany, for example, we have a lot of very white male spaces that are people in their 20s, and that's it. So if your place is not diverse, if your team is not diverse, if your booking is not diverse, nothing will change. So you have to think about who's here and who do I want to have here? Who who should be here? Who do I want to empower? Who do I want to support? Who do I want to give space? And not in a way of making it about myself, but to actually give space and give money and give resources to those people so they can actually get the same chance, because we don't all have the same starting points. You know, it's like telling to someone who doesn't have legs run as fast as the rest, you just have to try harder. It's like not how it works. Like, and it's the same with any kind of discrimination, marginalization, etc. So we have very little time left, but I do want to hear from you if you have a question to any one of us here. If you don't, oh, it's all good, but I'd love to include you if I can. Anyone?
No.
Nah.
If not, I mean, you can tell, we can like go on forever.
Venga, va, animar.
I can't really see much, I have to say.
Me neither.
I'd love to go now.
It's like, oh yeah, they're here. Cool.
No.
Well,
Now I can see them.
if not, we also have our little word cloud. Can I have a look on that? I'm going to stand up so I can actually read it. Yeah, awareness team, sport, interesting. Kindness, tolerance. By the way, I hate the word tolerance. It's Latin for to basically endure something. It implies I don't like it, but I'm going with it. And just a little short indication on the word tolerance. It's not positive. Yeah, transparency is a super, super important thing. Communication and transparency, they are linked. And if you can go with any kind of policy, but you have to be transparent. And if you say, for example, 0 tolerance, and it's on the website, it's on the poster, it's been told to you on the door, it's not a problem because people know what they're getting into. But if they don't know it, and then all of a sudden they get kicked out, they're like, what the fuck just happened to me?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's hard to read those. Best drugs. I'm not sure what best drugs does.
You wrote that one. Secure drugs as well.
Definitely, and that's also a question. Like, how do you work with harm reduction? How do you kind of like also take care of people who are like in a drug-related emergency? Because not everyone can do that. It's a completely different set. So that's also a really good point, and it depends on your space, how much drug issues you have, or if alcohol is your main drug, which is just a drug. We have to admit that.
I guess alcohol's our main drug, but we don't judge if someone gets into trouble
we have an
on drugs.
Infirmary,
you know.
and then we call an ambulance, or we are really connected with. Well, we are very lucky because we have a really big, how do you say, not hospital, but medical area where they can, they can go, and it's just almost across the street. So it's really,
as well.
Yeah,
that's handy.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, we don't judge anyone. If anyone comes, because obviously you're not allowed to have drugs, really. But if someone does get in and they have done something and they get into trouble, we wouldn't judge them. We wouldn't bar them or anything. We would just treat them, basically, in the welfare team. We have
I heard from a Berlin club that they had someone who was running with his head to the wall for like 3 hours, and after the first they put on the helmet. I guess it's a choice.
Yeah.
But again, it's good to not let people just leave with, them being so out of it that they can't handle themselves, or to put them onto a cab. That also happens because cabs are not safe spaces or safer spaces. They're just like...
Normally, we if that happens, we call a taxi. We take a picture of the plate, and we keep the name of the person we pay for a lot of cabs.
Yeah, so do we.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we do.
Really?
Yeah, we pay for they're in trouble, they can't get home, or even if they've lost people and they're not in a good way, we actually pay for a cab. We get a cab and take them home.
But then they get home and they're alone. If there's no one on the other side.
Normally they
or wherever they want to go, or even if they need to go to the hospital, whatever. One of our staff sometimes will go with.
Yeah. Oh.
If it's not an ambulance situation, but they just want to get checked over at the hospital, sometimes one of our staff will go with them in the cab. There's like a really full-on duty of care, It's just, especially since, we were closed down, as we all know, like 4 years ago, and I won't go into all of that, but, we got closed down, and so it's just really massively been stepped up now. It's just like, 110% sort of duty of care, really, for that customer. Because we're responsible for like everything that goes on in that area once that club, while the club is open. So even if it's something happened from the bar next door, we're still responsible, because we're just responsible for a whole radius of the area that we are, the club is. Sucks, but
I think it's good to think about that too. Like as well with inclusion, accessibility, as well as with safer spaces. It's not just inside; it's getting there. It's getting home. All those spaces, like all the paths, need to be safe and okay to be handled. So, for example, there's a Berlin-based, and I think that's also around somewhere else, that they have a get well safe pot where they just collect money, and anyone who does not feel safe, like trans people or queer people do often, or also in certain spaces, of course, black and other marginalized people, they can just take out the money if they need it, and then they can just like take a cab. Or in Berlin, for example, we have a lot of issues with public transport control people. If you don't have a ticket because you can't afford it, there's quite a lot of violence going on there. So also they can put in like a public transport ticket, and then you can just, be safe in that way, that you have a ticket and you can show it, and no one will be like harassing you because you don't or you can't afford it. So there's small things you can also do, and they might not even cost you anything if you just like think about something to start. I think we are perfectly on our time, so I'm going to finish with a small quote from David Gator, and it's, privilege is when you think something's not a problem because it's not a problem to you personally. And I think we all need to think about that a lot more, because everyone who's in power, most of them are like still white, are still male, are cis people, are hetero people, are like people who've like got all the privilege in the world. And I think everyone has some privilege towards someone else. And if we start reflecting that, then we know how to actually help others, to support them, not on a top-down way, but actually that we all lift each other up, and to be like acknowledging our differences and to enable us to be like on the same space level, or whatever we want to call it. So thank you all for being here, and I hope you enjoyed it. And of course, if you want to chat us up, have a drink with us, or talk anyway, come up. We'd be happy to. As you see, we can go on for hours more. Just do it. And get in touch. And our website, this is the last remark, Save the Dance with F. We wanted to call ourselves Safety Dance, but we were afraid that the guys from the 80s would like sue us. So savethedance.de. We have a lot of free resources. We have a guide on actually getting started on safer spaces, which is completely free. So you can have a look there too. And we're actually releasing a handbook sometime in September. So check it out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.